Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Listen, Donald Trump removed World War II honors to Black soldiers, a million Black soldiers that lost their lives. And Donald Trump is the face of white fragility. You know, first of all, he wants honors to only go to white soldiers. Donald Trump ain't fooling no damn body. And he got a lot of nerve. Those soldiers that died have more honor than Donald Trump ever will in his whole lifetime. Those Black soldiers fought and died for this country. Donald Trump's daddy went to a podiatrist and got a note saying that Donald Trump had bone spurs so he didn't have to go fight for his country. Donald Trump did not lift a finger to fight for America when he was supposed to go and fight. That's what he did. But those Black soldiers, they went and fought and gave the ultimate sacrifice. They got more honor than Donald Trump ever will have. And he got the nerve to remove them from the World War II memorial over in the Netherlands. Donald Trump, I pray one day that somebody will come behind you and erase everything about you from history. Your ass don't deserve to be remembered in history. You're a damn 34 convicted felon. You are a draft dodger. You are committing crimes sitting in office right now. And you're not fooling nobody. The reason why you did not cover those SNAP benefits is because that money got taken. You're not fooling nobody. You couldn't provide that money because that money was taken. I don't believe it was used for anything else. I believe the money was taken. And I believe a lot of that money have been taken. It wasn't moved anywhere else. It was completely taken. And you know what else, Donald Trump? Your legacy will be remembered as a failure. That's what it's going to be remembered as, a failure. Look at the shape this economy is under your watch. Since you've been in office, look at what you're doing, hiding the jobs report, hiding the inflation that's going on. And he won't even publish the inflation in the country, y'all. He's been hiding that too. But what Black soldiers did during World War II, he wants that completely wiped out of history. So that's okay, Donald Trump. You know, one day, everything about you is going to be wiped out of history too. I want you to remember that. Your people ain't going to always rule this earth. And when that day come, everything about you and the people you're trying to prop up right now, all of that's going to be wiped out of history too, buddy. That day is coming. And remember, everything you do to us, it's going to come back on you. It's already happening. It's already happening. That's why you're displaying all that fear now. If you think the only legacy that needs to be recognized on earth is that of what white men have done, that is nothing but downright laughable. Okay? That's downright laughable. I think even Three Eye Atlas would come here and laugh at that. If you told them the only thing that counts on earth is what white males have done, I think even Three Eye Atlas would come here and laugh you off the face of the earth. Even they got sense enough to know that ain't true. So this is what Donald Trump has done. And And he's been doing this all along, y'all. You can best believe even during the government shutdown, he's been just quietly removing any achievements our people have done. And he wants to put his people all out in the forefront, like they're the only ones in this country that have done things. And Donald Trump, you got the vocabulary of a fourth grader. And there is no way, just listening to you, that that is even believable. You mean to tell me you think somebody will sit down with you and somebody like Pete Hegseth and believe the only ones that have achieved something is people like you? Oh, man. Y'all, yes, I mean, yeah. The Netherlands, the Buffalo Soldiers, you know, even World War One, the Buffalo Soldiers that came out of Harlem, they're all buried over there. All of them are buried over there in Normandy, over there in France. They're buried over there. A lot of our brothers are buried over there that fought in the wars, World War One and Two. And Donald Trump don't believe they deserve to be honored. He don't believe they deserve it. This draft dodger with fake bone spurs don't believe that our brothers that really fought, he don't believe they deserve any honor or recognition. A draft dodger don't believe that about our men, of all things. Donald Trump, boy, your day is coming. Your day is coming. You know, the Most High is using you, and when he gets done with you, he gonna do what he always does with a Gentile. He's gonna destroy you. So, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. And the Crawford Experience, thank you so much for your super chat. This fraudulent government can't erase real Black history. No, they can't. Donald Trump can't erase nothing. If anything, he needs to cancel himself. The only thing that needs to be canceled is Donald Trump. Second, y'all. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Yeah, racism is jealousy, and that's all this is. It's racism. And we know racism is jealousy at the end of the day. You know, they can't stand that these soldiers went over there and fought. They did way more than Donald Trump did for this country. He just sitting there hiding behind a presidency so his ass don't have to go to jail. He don't give a shit about this country. That's why he's sitting there destroying it every day. He don't care about this country. Donald Trump wouldn't fight for this country. If you made Donald Trump a young man right now and a war broke out, he would still be looking to make an excuse not to go. He wouldn't fight for this country if you gave him 100 chances to go to war. He would probably find 100 reasons not to go. There's no honor in Donald Trump. There's no honor in that man at all. Just a bunch of white fragility and fake bone spurs. That's about it. Thank you, everybody.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, World War I came to an end with the signing of an armistice in a railroad car in France in 1918. Now, every year on November 11th, America honors the veterans who served their country in the armed forces. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. In 1918, the president was a Democrat named Woodrow Wilson who resegregated the military. In 2025, the president is a Republican named Donald Trump who just removed plaques honoring Black soldiers from a U.S. military cemetery in the Netherlands. It's part of a disturbing pattern from this administration of purging Black generals, burying Black history, and promoting white lies. But Black freedom fighters will not be erased. From the 1st Rhode Island Regiment in 1778 to Harriet Tubman's Combahee River Raid in 1863, to the Harlem Hellfighters of World War I, to the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, Black service members have fought, bled, and died for a country that far too often refused to fight for them. I do not celebrate war, but to my great-grandfather who served with the Harlem Hellfighters in Europe in World War I, to my uncles who served in Vietnam in the 1960s, to my stepfather who served in the Persian Gulf, whose flag flies behind me, and to the 2.5 million Black U.S. veterans still living, I say to them what the commanders-in-chief should have said. Thank you for your service.
I want to first start this post off by telling my son, thank you for being a veteran, for fighting for American democracy. Veterans Day is not to be confused with Memorial Day. Memorial Day is for soldiers who have passed on. But we're going to talk about a memorial on Veterans Day because it's unacceptable. Leaders in the Netherlands were perplexed when a plaque that honored Black soldiers who helped to defeat Hitler and his men was missing. They thought it was vandalism. So they contacted the Secretary of War, Pete Hessig. Come to find out, no, it's not missing. It was just removed. So to think over 1 million African American men helped to secure America's future, and they're being honored by erasure from history. And they didn't remove all the plaques, just the plaques about the Black soldiers. And they could have redid a plaque with all of the soldiers and then took all the plaques down and put it up, but they didn't. They just removed the Black ones. So if this were World War II again, I don't think America would be on the side it was on before.
Has removed a display from a U.S. military cemetery in the Netherlands that honors Black soldiers who served in World War II. The visitor center display commemorated the contributions of Black soldiers and highlighted the discrimination they faced in the military. Well, the panel in question was removed by the American Battle Monuments Commission earlier this year. The agency said it was due to an internal review of interpretive content under the agency's previous secretary, Charles Zhu, a Biden appointee who was dismissed by President Trump in April. According to Zhu, the removal was done via an internal agency review at the prompting of the Trump administration. The White House has yet to comment.
Jefferson Wiggins was 19 years old when he started digging graves in the Netherlands. He dug 20,000 of them. For 65 years, he never spoke about it. Not to his wife, not to his children. The silence was that deep. When he finally broke that silence in 2009, his testimony changed everything. It led to books, documentaries, a memorial. For the first time in history, the story of the Black soldiers who built one of Europe's most sacred cemeteries was officially told. The memorial stood for 1 year. Then Donald Trump took office, and it disappeared. This is the story of how the Trump administration erased a World War II memorial honoring Black soldiers. Not because the history was disputed, not because the facts were wrong, but because someone decided that acknowledging segregation violated Trump's executive order against diversity programs. The memorial is gone, but the graves remain. And the Dutch families who've cared for them for 80 years are demanding answers America won't give. The Netherlands American Cemetery at Margrata is one of the most sacred sites in Europe. 8,301 American soldiers are buried there. Another 1,722 names are listed on the walls of the missing. They died liberating Europe from Nazi occupation during Operation Market Garden, the Battle of the Bulge, the final push into Germany. But here's what makes Margrata unique. Since 1945, every single grave has been adopted by a Dutch family. They tend the graves, bring flowers, research the soldiers' lives. They pass this responsibility down through generations. Some families have been caring for the same grave for 80 years. This level of devotion doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. But here's what those Dutch families didn't know for 65 years. The cemetery they'd been honoring since 1945 was built by Black American soldiers who faced systematic segregation while performing some of the most traumatic work of the war. The cemetery was constructed in November 1944 by two all-black units, the 961st Quartermaster Service Company and the 3132nd Quartermaster Service Company. 275 men in the 961st alone. They arrived to find thousands of bodies waiting. The ground was frozen. There were no coffins. Bodies had to be wrapped in mattress covers because that's all they had. The men dug graves by hand with picks and shovels, 6 feet deep, 20,000 times, in one of the coldest, wettest winters on record. First Sergeant Jefferson Wiggins led the work. He was 19 years old. Later, when he finally found the words to describe it, Wiggins said the men cried silently as they dug. No one spoke during the day except those who prayed over graves. One soldier, James Parks, would stand at attention after each burial, place his hand over his heart, and sing a spiritual. Every single time, 20,000 times. The psychological toll was devastating. These men were burying Americans who in life wouldn't have let them sit in the same room. They were performing the most sacred duty the military has, preparing the dead for eternal rest while being treated as inferior because of the color of their skin. Jefferson Wiggins buried the memory so deeply that he didn't speak of it for 65 years. The trauma was that severe. Of the 8,301 soldiers buried at Mar Grata, 172 are African American. They represent about 12.5% of the American forces that liberated the Netherlands. For decades, their stories were invisible in the official record. The cemetery existed. The Dutch families cared for the graves, but no one knew who had built it. No one knew about the 961st or the 3132nd. No one knew about Jefferson Wiggins or James Parks or the silent crying while they dug. Then, in 2009, Dutch historian Mika Kerkels tracked down Jefferson Wiggins. He was the last surviving member of the 961st Quartermaster Service Company, and she convinced him to finally speak. His testimony changed everything. It launched the Black Liberators Project. It sparked books, documentaries, research initiatives. The Dutch people who'd been tending these graves for 65 years learned for the first time that the cemetery had been built by Black American soldiers facing segregation, and they wanted that story told. Fast forward to 2024. After years of advocacy by Dutch historians, the Black Liberators Foundation, and veterans organizations, 2 memorial panels were installed in the visitor center at Mar Grata. They were added to what was described as a permanent exhibition. The first panel told the broader story. It explained that approximately 1 million African Americans served in World War II, that they fought 2 wars simultaneously, one against the Axis powers abroad and one against racism and segregation within their own military. That many were confined to support roles not because of ability, but because of the color of their skin. And it detailed one of the most traumatic of those roles, graves registration work, burying the dead. The second panel honored a specific soldier, George H. Pugh, a telephone engineer with the 3132nd Quartermaster Service Company. Pugh survived the entire war, made it through the liberation, through the brutal winter, through everything. Then on June 10, 1945, 1 month after Victory in Europe Day, he saw a comrade fall into a river. George Pugh dove in to save him. Both men drowned. George Pugh died performing an act of selfless heroism after the fighting was over. These panels were factual. They were respectful. They told a story that had been systematically excluded from the historical record for 80 years. The Dutch community celebrated them. Veterans organizations praised them. They filled a gap that had existed since 1945. And then, in 2025, they vanished. The removal was first reported by the Dutch newspaper NRC on November 7, 2025. The two memorial panels had been quietly taken down. No public announcement. No explanation to the Dutch organizations that had fought for them. No notice to the Black Liberators Foundation. They were just gone. The American Battle Monuments Commission, the U.S. government agency that manages the cemetery, offered only vague statements. A spokesperson told the NRC that the George Pugh panel was part of a rotating exhibit, but they provided no explanation for the removal of the other panel, the one about the 961st Quartermaster Service Company, the one that explicitly mentioned segregation, the one that described the two-front war Black soldiers had to fight. The timing was impossible to ignore. The panels had been installed in 2024 under the Biden administration. They were removed in 2025, shortly after Trump took office. And according to multiple Dutch news reports, the removal followed a complaint from the Heritage Foundation. Let's talk about the Heritage Foundation. It's one of the most powerful conservative think tanks in America, and it has enormous influence in the Trump administration. The foundation authored Project 2025, the 900-page blueprint for reshaping the federal government. When Trump took office in January 2025, one of his first actions was signing an executive order terminating all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across federal agencies. Every DEI office was to be shut down, every DEI contract canceled, every chief diversity officer position eliminated. The Heritage Foundation immediately began monitoring federal agencies for compliance. They weren't just waiting for agencies to follow the order. They were actively hunting for violations. In March 2025, the Heritage Foundation released a report documenting their inquiry into the American Battle Monuments Commission. The ABMC, the agency that manages military cemeteries overseas, had still been displaying information about its chief diversity officer on its website weeks after Trump's order. The Heritage Foundation contacted them, demanded to know why they hadn't complied. Within days, the ABMC announced full compliance. The chief diversity officer was placed on administrative leave. The DEI statement was moved behind a password-protected page. All DEI content was scrubbed from the website. That's the context. The Heritage Foundation was actively policing federal agencies, forcing them to eliminate anything it classified as DEI-related. And then, according to Dutch news reports and academic researchers tracking this issue, the Heritage Foundation filed a complaint about the Margraten panels. The complaint allegedly argued that the panels violated Trump's executive order, that they were divisive, that they represented woke ideology, and the panels disappeared. Here's what's so insidious about this. The panels didn't express opinions. They stated facts, facts that are documented in records, oral histories, and academic research. The U.S. military was segregated during World War II. Black soldiers faced systematic discrimination within the armed forces. Black soldiers were disproportionately assigned to service roles, including graves registration. The 961st and 3132nd Quartermaster Service Companies built Netherlands American Cemetery. The work was psychologically traumatic. George H. Pugh drowned trying to save a comrade on June 10, 1945. None of this is disputed. None of this is controversial among historians. It's simply what happened. But the Heritage Foundation classified it as diversity ideology, and the Trump administration removed it. Professor Mika Kerkels, senior researcher at the NIOD Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies in the Netherlands, told the NRC she was shocked by the removal. At the same time, she said, it fits with the Trump administration's policy targeting diversity and inclusion programs. Think about what that means. Acknowledging that Black soldiers faced segregation is now considered a diversity program. Stating that they were assigned traumatic work because of their race is now classified as divisive. Honoring a Black soldier's heroism, like George Poog's sacrifice, is apparently too woke to be allowed in a federal cemetery. The message is clear. If history makes people uncomfortable, erase it. The response in the Netherlands has been swift and intense. Theo Bovens, chairman of the Black Liberators in the Netherlands Foundation, condemned the removal. Bovens isn't some left-wing activist. He's a prominent conservative politician, leader of the Christian Democratic Appeal Party, and a former governor. He said the lack of attention paid to Black liberators is truly insufficient, and announced he would raise the issue with the new U.S. ambassador to the Netherlands. 11 political parties in the provincial states of Limburg, representing nearly the entire political spectrum, have demanded action. They've asked local governments to investigate whether a temporary memorial can be erected to honor the Black American liberators while the panels remain removed. Dutch historians who spent years uncovering these stories are outraged. Mika Kerkels, who tracked down Jefferson Wiggins and wrote the book From Alabama to Margraten, expressed shock. Sebastian Fonts, who co-founded the Black Liberators Project, echoed her concerns. Veterans organizations have condemned it. The Adoption Foundation that manages the grave program has spoken out. Because to the Dutch, this isn't politics. This is memory. This is gratitude. For 80 years, they've honored these soldiers. They've tended their graves. They've researched their lives. They've treated this cemetery as sacred ground. And when they learned that it had been built by Black soldiers facing segregation, they wanted that story honored alongside the rest. They fought for those panels to be installed. And now, an American political organization has successfully lobbied for their removal. Here's what makes this particularly stark. The Trump administration removed panels honoring Black soldiers who fought against fascism. Meanwhile, Trump signed an executive order which allows the return of a massive Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery. That monument was removed from Arlington in 2023 after years of controversy. It depicts enslaved people as willing, happy servants. It shows a loyal mammy character nursing a white baby. It shows an enslaved man marching off to war alongside his Confederate master, portrayed as a faithful servant rather than a person held in bondage. The monument was designed to promote the lost cause mythology, the false narrative that the Confederacy fought for noble principles and that enslaved people were content with their condition. It's propaganda. It's historically dishonest, and it glorifies an army that fought to preserve slavery. Trump wants it back in Arlington National Cemetery. He's called its removal ridiculous and ordered it restored. So let's be clear about what we're seeing. Factual panels about Black soldiers who faced segregation while fighting fascism, removed. A Confederate monument that glorifies slavery, restored. Panels that acknowledge racism, classified as divisive. A monument that romanticizes the Confederacy, considered appropriate. The story of Jefferson Wiggins and the 961st Quartermaster Service Company, erased. The myth of the loyal slave, celebrated. This isn't about reducing divisiveness. This isn't about moving beyond identity politics. This is about controlling which version of history gets told. The American Battle Monuments Commission has maintained that the removal was simply a scheduled rotation of temporary exhibits, that it was routine, that it had nothing to do with politics. But that explanation falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. First, the panels were described as part of a permanent exhibition when they were installed in 2024. Not temporary, not rotating, permanent. Second, if this was a planned rotation, why wasn't the public informed in advance? Why was there no announcement about what exhibits would replace them? Why did the ABMC only offer vague explanations after the Dutch press broke the story? Third, why would you rotate out the only panels in the entire visitor center that tell the story of the men who built the cemetery? What possible logic justifies removing that specific piece of history? And fourth, the timing. The panels were installed under Biden, removed under Trump, after the Heritage Foundation filed a complaint. after the Heritage Foundation had already successfully forced the ABMC to eliminate its DEI programs. That's not routine. That's political pressure. That's censorship. Here's what visitors to Margrattan won't see anymore. They won't read about how Jefferson Wiggins and 275 other Black soldiers were crammed below deck on a troop ship while white soldiers enjoyed comfort above. They won't read about how these men dug 20,000 graves in frozen ground, breathing in the smell of decomposition for months, some of them crying as they worked. They won't read about how they buried white Americans who in life wouldn't have let them sit in the same room. They won't read about George Pugh, who dove into a river to save a comrade and drowned 1 month after the war ended. They won't read about the 172 Black Americans at Margrattan, 12.5% of the cemetery, whose stories were systematically excluded from the historical record until Dutch historians fought to uncover them. All of that has been removed, and tourists will walk through that visitor center and see a sanitized version of history, a version where segregation isn't mentioned, where the two-front war isn't acknowledged, where the trauma of Black soldiers is invisible.
So Donald Trump and the Heritage Foundation get to complain about Black soldiers being in history. Do we get to complain about them? I'm serious. Do we get to complain about them? These folks are like that. They want to have a complaint about us, but if you complain about them, then they got a problem. These folks, man, whew, the Most High got to deal with these folks for real. He got to deal with them. All right, I'm going to push this forward because there's actually a lot more. See, I mean, it is a shame because this should not be removed from history because Donald Trump is pushing this out of history when it is a very important part of history, you know? And nobody is going to listen to nothing but a bunch of babbling about white history. Who the hell's going to do that? You might as well just close down everything if it's only going to be white history and that's it. Just close everything down because nobody's going to visit for that reason. Nobody's going to visit no museum if it's all white history. Nobody's going to, even the school kids ain't going to be interested in that. So, so that's what I guess Donald Trump and this Heritage Foundation want it to be. So they're going to make it all dry and boring from now on. Everything dry and boring. Because if you're making it all white, then that's exactly what it's going to be. Dry and boring, uninteresting, and nobody's going to go see this. Nobody's going to go see it. All right, let's move on.
It can never be restored.
Donald Trump just secretly removed a plaque honoring Black American soldiers who died in World War II from an American cemetery in the Netherlands. It's just so evil. More than 8,200 Americans are buried at the Netherlands American Cemetery in the southern village of Margrattan. Another 1,700 officially counted as missing have their names displayed. A total of 174 African American soldiers are buried or memorialized at this cemetery. It's the only U.S. military cemetery in the country. But Dutch media reported earlier this month that 2 informational panels about African American soldiers in the mid-20th century war had been taken down in the cemetery's visitor center. A local official who spoke anonymously said that authorities in the Limburg province where the cemetery is located was not informed of the removal. We don't know exactly when Donald Trump removed this tribute because, again, he did it in secret. He quietly did it, but it happened. Donald Trump and his MAGA lunatic buddies trying to erase Black history by saying it's DEI or woke is so despicable and racist. These are soldiers who fought for our freedoms. They deserve to be acknowledged. Yet, I guess Donald Trump doesn't agree.
So did you hear what the Trump administration did at one of America's military cemeteries in Europe, just in time for Veterans Day? Yeah, the story just broke that a display panel that had commemorated the contributions of the 1 million African Americans who fought to liberate Europe from the Nazis had been removed. It had been installed a few years ago at a visitor center at the Netherlands American Cemetery, where more than 8,000 American soldiers are buried. No explanation was offered for why the panel was removed, but once you learn what the panel talked about, the answer is obvious. The panel's text pointed out that African Americans during World War II were waging what they called a double V campaign, fighting fascism in Europe and racism in America. Racism that permeated the American military when it headed to Europe and made the lives of Black soldiers very difficult and convinced many of them to pursue civil rights when they returned to the United States. It's a story that's brilliantly chronicled in Matthew Delmont's book, Half American, the heroic story of African Americans fighting World War II at home and abroad. The visitor center also explained that the cemetery had been constructed under extremely difficult circumstances by African American soldiers in 1944, circumstances that reflected that racism in the US military. These are the kind of civil rights stories that Pete Hegseth and Trump have sought to purge from military installations, Pentagon websites, and military cemeteries. While at the same time, they renamed 9 military bases for Confederate generals who fought against the United States to preserve slavery for all time, and restored a Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery. So to summarize the Trump administration's policy regarding history, suppress the telling of African American history while elevating symbols of white supremacist history. The good news is that many people in the Netherlands, especially those who live near the cemetery, but also prominent politicians, have expressed outrage over the removal of the panel and have vowed to have it restored. Stay tuned.
Just removed all the African American cemetery statues for all the World War II African American soldiers. How effing racist do you have to be? Guys, what do you think about this? Apparently, this was at the Netherlands American Cemetery, and the U.S. quietly removed all the memorials to Black World War II soldiers, which, I mean, World War II was a long time ago, but it almost seems like they're trying to delete part of history, and I don't really know. What do y'all think about this? Because look how many memorials they have for every single soldier. And some people were speculating in the comments that maybe they were just relocating them. So it isn't 100% guaranteed that they wanted to just get rid of them completely, but it is just a little bit odd. Quite literally no greater patriots than our World War II heroes. This is absolutely disgusting and straight up 20th century style racism. Yes, let me know your opinion on this entire situation. I'll keep you updated, so make sure to follow me, but it seems like it's getting pretty weird.
The Trump regime has removed a memorial honoring fallen Black soldiers who helped liberate Europe in World War II. The move has sparked heated debate. One of the plaques details the more than 1 million African Americans who volunteered to serve in the war, highlighting the struggles they faced both against the enemy and discrimination within the U.S. military at the time, including being restricted to support roles. The second plaque honors telephone engineer George H. Pruitt, who died in June 1945 while trying to save his comrades. As part of their relentless war on Black history and purging all evidence of any accomplishment by anyone who wasn't a white man, Pete Hegseth's Pentagon has removed a 2-panel memorial from the Netherlands American Cemetery in Margareton, South Limburg, after complaints by the Heritage Foundation, a racism factory masquerading as a think tank. One of the 2 panels described how 1 million African Americans volunteered for service during World War II, but had to fight against both the enemy and racism on their own side, including segregation within the Army itself that confined many to supporting roles, notes military history blogger at Chris O. Wiki. A second panel was dedicated to telephone engineer George H. Pruitt, who died on the 10th of June 1945 while trying to save a comrade who had fallen into a river. It is beyond disgraceful that the Trump admin would demean the sacrifice of the brave Black Americans who risked their lives to liberate Europe from men like Pete Hegseth and the fascist devils at the Heritage Foundation. We cannot allow them to rewrite our history to suit their racist narrative.
It's Veterans Day, and what I'm about to tell you is absolutely disgusting. While America is supposed to be honoring all veterans who served, Donald Trump's government is erasing some of them. And yes, you guessed which ones. See, this week, the United States quietly removed a memorial in the Netherlands that honored the more than 1 million Black soldiers who fought in World War II. The display stood at the American Cemetery in Margraten, where 8,000 U.S. troops are buried, including 174 African Americans. Now, one of the panels told the truth, that Black soldiers didn't just fight the Nazis, they fought segregation in their own ranks. They built airfields, drove supply trucks, dug graves, and liberated Europe while still being denied equal rights at home. Now those panels are gone. No notice, no ceremony, just disappeared. The Trump administration's excuse? Routine rotation. But there's nothing routine about erasing history, especially the parts that make America uncomfortable, and especially the week leading up to Veterans Day. And it just happens to come after complaints from far-right groups like the Heritage Foundation, who say the military should stop dividing soldiers by race, even though those soldiers were treated differently. See, on Veteran Days of all days, this is how Trump chooses to honor service, by pretending some service didn't count. So remember this: the men who stormed beaches, flew planes, and built bridges for freedom all deserve to be remembered, because erasing their story doesn't make America prouder, it makes America smaller.
The Trump regime is removing memorials for Black American soldiers. In the Netherlands, officials are demanding answers from the US after two panels honoring Black American soldiers were suddenly removed from the Netherlands American Cemetery in Margraten, a site where more than 8,000 Americans who died in World War II are buried. The panels told the story of George H. Pruitt, a Black war hero from New Jersey who died saving another soldier, and another explained the segregation that Black troops faced while fighting to liberate Europe from the Nazis. Both of those panels gone earlier this summer. The U.S. agency in charge, the American Battle Monuments Commission, claimed the panels were rotated out as part of a normal exhibition cycle. But Dutch officials say they weren't informed and aren't buying it. 11 political parties in the province of Limburg called the removals indecent and unacceptable. The province's top official, Emil Romer, says he'll be meeting with the U.S. ambassador to demand the panels be put back. And local historians are pointing out the irony. Black soldiers helped build that cemetery after the war, and now their stories are literally being erased from it. Will those memorials go back up, you might be asking? Maybe. But when you start rewriting history to make it more comfortable for racists, under Trump's leadership, that's not an accident. It's pretty bad when people in the Netherlands can see it, but most of the people in America, they can't.
When we say they're trying to erase Black people from the history of America, this is what we mean. In the Netherlands, at the American Cemetery in Margraten, two panels honoring Black soldiers who fought in World War II were removed earlier this year. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. Those panels told the story of George H. Pruitt, a Black soldier who died heroically after the war, celebrated the Double V campaign, the fight against fascism abroad and racism at home. They were installed to finally recognize the nearly 1 million African Americans, Black people who served in Europe. And now they've been taken down in compliance with a new federal order dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And it seems that the Dutch people are more angry about this than we are, because it was an actual tourist destination. See, we need to realize that this is erasure of truth, of sacrifice, of legacy, because this isn't just about signs in a cemetery. It's about how we remember those who gave everything for a country that doesn't even want to remember them. Black veterans have fought in every war this nation has ever waged. From the Revolutionary War to today's global conflicts, they've carried America on their backs, even when America refused to carry them. They fought for freedom abroad while being denied that freedom here at home. They defended democracy while being shut out of it. Still, they served, not just out of patriotism, but out of hope. Hope that their sacrifice would build a better future for the generations after them. Even today, Black veterans continue to serve and lead, often while facing higher rates of homelessness, discrimination in benefits, and health disparities. Resilience is the truest form of American courage. This month, we commemorated Veterans Day, and honoring Black veterans means telling the truth, naming their contributions, recognizing their sacrifices, and fighting for the justice that they earned. To every Black veteran, your service matters, your story matters, and this nation owes you more than gratitude. It owes you justice, dignity, and the full measure of respect that you deserve. And that includes honoring your history, our heritage, and your contribution to this nation.
Exactly. Well, Donald Trump, just look at Donald Trump. This is why Donald Trump got failing health. This is why he got those big fat cankles walking around. This is why he got that drooping side of his face, having those mini strokes. Donald Trump, every time you try to go on the attack of our people, it's nothing but bad things coming your way. It's just now, in the beginning was 300,000 Black women that lost their jobs. I think now it's up to like 800,000 that have lost their jobs since Donald Trump took office, you know, and it was pushing out all these women that they claim got jobs through DEI and all this stuff. Donald Trump, your day is coming. Your day is coming. You can sit there and try to hide behind, oh, getting rid of DEI. You are just hiding behind that as a means of being a straight up racist. That's all you're doing. And you think you got the perfect cover, is using that DEI crap is your cover to get away with doing all this stuff. That's all it is. There's many of us that can see straight through what you're doing. And don't be surprised if you're going to need more MRIs in the coming future, Donald Trump. You are falling apart. Nobody needs no 2 damn MRIs in 1 year. Okay, not unless something is going wrong. So, and your cankles are telling me something is going wrong with your heart. That's a heart problem. I've been around too many people with heart problems, including my own mother. I know what those swollen cankles are. I know what that is. So, you can keep coming at us all you want. And our Heavenly Father, He will take care of you. He already taken care of you. He will continue to take care of you and all those Heritage Foundation people too. He gonna take care of all of you. One thing you can't do is escape judgment. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you again, the Crawford Experience, for your super chat. This fraudulent government can't erase real Black history. They most certainly can't. They can't erase us at all. But their attempt will all be in vain. I guess they have not learned a lesson yet. When you mess with the chosen one, things ain't gonna end well for you. It won't end well for you. So, y'all, please enjoy the rest of your night, and we will come together and do this all over again tomorrow. Shalom, family.